What's up, everybody? This is Harley, and today we're going to be talking about the machine called Devel on Hack the Box. This is going to be my first video recording of a Hack the Box write-up, and if you're not familiar with Hack the Box, I definitely recommend checking them out if you're interested in getting into hacking. It's a really awesome platform for being able to hack machines legally with permission and kind of get your feet wet in that. So I'm going to go ahead and make a video of a blog post that I made earlier this year, and if you'd like to kind of follow along with me or go through the blog post, I will put the link in the description and you'll be able to check all that out. So, yeah, before we get started, please hit that like button and let's just dive right in. Okay, so to begin, of course, we're going to hit this machine with an Nmap scan, and I actually like the syntax that IPsec uses, so if you ever watched any of his videos, you'll see a similar syntax between mine and his. SV for enumerating versions, SC for default scripts, we're hitting all ports, and then we're going to output this into an Nmap directory and call it initial. And it looks like we got two ports that came back. We've got FTP and then port 80. So those are the only two that are being listened on. To begin, I'm just going to go ahead and see if I can do anonymous logins with FTP. So, and it looks like actually Nmap already told us, yes, we can. And we see an IIS start page as well as an ASP.NET client and a welcome PNG. So that kind of indicates, or at least looks like it could be kind of like the default web directory. So I'm going to go out to this web page here, which is at 10.10.10.5. Yeah, and then if we view the page source on this guy, welcome PNG is listed here, and we got welcome PNG there. So I think there's a good chance that this directory we have FTP access to is going to be just the web root directory here. So what I'm going to try is I'm going to see if I can connect to it, and we'll just use anonymous logins here. And if we list out the contents, we see all that like we saw earlier, right? Well, I want to go ahead and just create, I'm going to echo hello into a test.html file. And then I'm going to change this to binary mode by typing bin, and then we're just going to see if we can put that test.html file. So cool, it looks like transfer was complete. So let's come here and let's just see if we can go to test.html. Nice. All right, so what this tells us is whatever file we place in this FTP directory, we should be able to execute by just going to that file here in the web browser. So right away, I'm going to see if we can use an ASP shell or some sort of web shell. The reason I went with ASP is because this is running IIS, or at least it appears to be. The other thing, there's a WAPalizer extension to Firefox that you can add, and this will help tell you some of the technologies that are being utilized on the web server you're visiting. So it does confirm here we're using ASP. So I'm going to see if I can maybe find like an ASP web shell. Kali has some built in, so I'm just going to see, I think it's under user, share, web shells, and then ASP, let's go X. And yeah, cool. Looks like there's just the one. So I'm actually going to change this to a copy command. We'll throw that into the directory we're working in. So I'm going to see if now I can just kind of put this command asp.aspx shell, and then we'll see if we can go to it. Command aspx. Okay, so we're looking at a box here. I'm just going to say quick, who am I command? Nice. And we do have command execution. So this is awesome. The next thing I want to look at is, can I actually communicate? I'll zoom in a bit here. Can I actually communicate to from like my Kali attacking machine to this machine here? Like, can the network talk back and forth? So I'm going to try a ping command, but I want to see if I can actually receive those pings. So on this machine here, I'm going to set up a TCPDUMP, and I need to grab any ICMP request on my interface, which is ton0, because that is my VPN interface. Throw in my elevated password here, and now we're listening for any ICMP request on that interface. So now if I come here, let's clear this out. If I do a quick IPA, I can grab, this is my ton0 IP address, And now I can come in here and I can just try to ping myself from the web server. And check that out. So we're getting ICMP echo request and replies. So this confirms not only do we have command execution, but we actually can communicate back and forth between the two boxes. So that's awesome. Um, I think next up, what I want to try is to get some sort of reverse shell going on. So if you haven't already seen my blog post on this topic, I've got some other posts that are super helpful, I think. So if we come in here, I actually have a reverse sheet, like a reverse payload cheat sheet. And so if you type in infinitelogins.com, you can actually do /s /?s is equal to, and then you can just type in whatever search term you want. So I'm going to do msfvenom. And the first result that comes back is this reverse shell payload cheat sheet. And I have it organized where I've got the non-meterpreter binaries first. That way, if you're going for the OSCP, you won't be able to use meterpreter, and it might be easier for you to find what you're looking for. So if we come in here, I'm going to control F and I'm just going to search for ASP. And I've got a non-meterpreter web payload that I can copy out of here. And then just come in and clear our screen out. If I paste this command in, all we need to do is adjust a few things. So we'll change the L port to 443 and the L host to the IP address of my machine, which is 10.10.14.44. And I don't know if I need to do this elevator or not, so I'm just going to throw sudo in front of it. So that's going to go on, it's going to create a shell.asp file that, in theory, should be able to call back on our machine and we'd be able to catch it. So I'm going to come back down to our FTP client because that's the easiest way to transfer files. Make sure I still have, nope, it disconnected me. So I'm going to exit out, just kind of clear the screen here, connect back. And then in binary mode, I will put shell.asp. That has been transferred. We can kill this window and we can start up a Netcat listener. So I'll do Netcat and VLP on 443 because that is the port that I generated my payload with. Okay, so now we're listening for any incoming connections and we've got this shell ASP sitting on that box. So if I come back, now we just need a way to execute it. And actually, I don't even need this command shell if this is going to work. I can just browse straight to shell.asp. Ooh, okay, so we got an error. Let's see if maybe we need to change this from an ASP to an ASPX file. And then we'll see if that makes a difference. Put that on there, come back. We don't have any connection here on our listener and we still have an error. Okay, so this ASP method is not working for us, but let's try another way. So in this reverse shell cheat sheet, in the top, I've also got just like regular exe binaries. So I don't know if we're looking at a 64 or a 32-bit machine, but we do have our command shell, so or at least our web shell. So I can come in and say system info. And we see that we're working with a Windows 7 machine that's running an x64 based processor. Or sorry, x86 based. So we know we're dealing with a 32-bit machine, and this is always a good command to run when you first get command execution, because it tells you a lot of information on a Windows machine. Like we could tell, not only are we running Windows 7, right, but it doesn't look like there are any patches applied. So there may even be some remote command execution vulnerability that we could try, but there's definitely going to be some kernel-based privilege escalation vulnerabilities on a machine this old. Looks like we've also don't have very much memory to work with, and so it might be acting a bit slow for us. So it's just a good idea to run this so you get an idea of what we're dealing with. Okay, so if we're running a 32-bit machine, then we'll want to use this payload here, and I will copy this one down. And like we did before, we'll just come in and adjust a couple things. So I'm still going to use port 443. I always like to use like port 80 or 443 or something that's going to be a common like outbound port because you never know what sort of like web firewall filter they might have in place, right? Like if you use a weird port like 4444, that could be blocked if they've got good egress firewall rules in place. But if you use something like 443 or port 80, most likely that's going to be allowed outbound because, well, that's super common like web traffic that usually end users are going to need to be able to do. So I like to use that, and then lport or lhost, I'm just going to use my IP address again, which I believe is 1444. And let me just make sure that's right. 1444, yes. Okay. Cool. So we've got all that. And again, I don't know if I need this to be elevated, so I will do sudo just in case. And then we should come back with shell x86. So I'm going to copy this guy. And if we come back down, again, I probably lost my shell here. Yeah. So clear this out, connect our FTP connection, change it to binary mode, and then I'm going to try to put this shell x86 file. Okay, so that's been placed on, and if we list the contents, right, so these are all the files that are on the machine. Now we just need to execute shell x86. Now, I said earlier, because we have this FTP console and we have this HTTP browser, we should be able to just browse to and execute any file we want, right? Well, let me show you what happens if we try to execute an executable this way. I'm going to run it, and we just get a prompt here to download that. So it's not actually going to have the web server execute this exe. Instead, it's just going to give us the opportunity to execute it ourselves or to download it to our machine. So we're going to need another way to try to execute this file. But luckily, we already have that method here because we've got command execution through our web shell. So I'm going to do a quick dir to see what directory I'm in now. And it looks like we're in the Windows sys32 directory. So if I were to just type in the name of this shell x86, it's likely not going to work, right? Because it's going to look in the present working directory that we're in, and if that this file is not in here. So what we need to do is we need to figure out what directory all of these files are hosted in. And I'm just going to start by diving my way in from the bottom. So I'm going to say dir, and we'll start with the C drive. And in here, we see an inet pub. And I just know from IIS web configs that usually the web root directory is going to be inside of this inet pub folder on the C drive. That's not always the case. That can be customizable, but that's typically what I see. And you will just kind of learn that the more you work with these type of technologies. So I'm going to copy this down. And www root is going to be my guess of where we're at. And check that out. We've got a list of all the different files in here. So I know the full path to find this file now. So I believe that is going to be this shell x86. We'll copy that down, throw that in here. Need to add a slash. And instead of doing a dir command on it, I just want to execute this file. And let's go and move this to the side a bit because we want to look down here. Because if I hit execute, in theory, we should get a connection. Nice. So we do see a connect. So I'm going to come down there. And we're just going to see if we can run like a who am I command. And it just kills our shell. We can put it back up, it connects again, try again, and it kills our shell. So, I mean, this is actually really, really common to see with Netcat. You might be able to, there's other methods to try to make this work, but I have found that using the interpreter, or I guess I should say the Metasploit exploit handler is typically a much better experience to actually be able to catch the shell and do it the right way. I think another piece or another reason why this might not be working is because this is a stage payload that we created. And I think we would need to use like an unstaged payload because I think what's happening here is the machine is calling out to our box and it does that initial connection, and then it's expecting our box to send back the next stage of the payload, and Netcat's not doing that. So I think that's why this isn't working, but that's okay. We can just go ahead and come up here and we can just go into, whoa, we can come into Metasploit. Sorry, clear this out. We'll do MSF console. Now, if you're watching this video and you're like, hey, what the hell? You said you're not going to be using Metasploit. That's true. I'm not going to be using Metasploit to perform any sort of exploitation of the box. You are actually allowed on the OSCP, you're allowed to use the exploit handler, the multi-handler, an unlimited number of times. That's not restricted. And that's all that we're going to do here. So I'm going to use the exploit multi-handler. If I typed it right. Cool. And then we'll look at our options here. And the first thing we need to do is set our payload. So it's currently defaulting to this Android payload. So I'm going to set our payload to, and I'm just going to copy this here. This is the payload that we use in our command. And I'm going to set my L host to be ton0, that's my VPN interface, and then I'm going to set my L port to be 443, like we mentioned in our command. So with all those in place, we're going to run this, and now we're going to come back to our web shell, and we're going to try to execute one more time. And check that out. We have a shell that got open. It looks like that it sent the stage back, and here we are. So if I do a who am I, now we can see, cool, we are this user. Now, again, I mentioned you can use the multi-handler. The thing that you can't use more than once is a meterpreter shell. So that is something that's super important to make sure you know the difference behind. Because we use the non-meterpreter binary, because we're just using a regular reverse TCP payload, that's allowed. The thing that's not allowed more than once is when you come down here into the meterpreter binaries and it says meterpreter in the name when you're actually executing that payload. So just something to be aware of if you care about the OSCP or if that's something that you're preparing for. So we've got our reverse shell here on the box. We are now that low-level user, and now we're looking towards privilege escalation. So this is where it can get kind of fun. I mentioned earlier when we did a system info command that there didn't seem to be any patches that were applied. So that's going to be helpful for us. It's going to probably mean that we have really the pick of any exploit that we want to use. So there's a couple tools that I like to use at this point, especially on an older machine like this where you think that there's going to be a kernel exploit involved. We can just go ahead and do a list here of my op directory and we'll see what we've got. So we've got a lot of different tools in here, but the one that I wanted to look at is either the WinPs or the windows-exploit-suggester. I don't think WinPs is going to run on this only because we're only dealing with like 2 gigs of memory, and that could be a little bit less than what WinPs needs. So I'm going to copy this one, and actually I don't need to copy it. What I need to do instead is come into that directory, list the contents of that. And so we've got a couple things in here. I'm just going to actually change into opt windows exploit suggester, clear this out, and we'll look at this again. So let's open up the readme.txt file, and it's kind of hard to read. So instead, I'm going to go out to GitHub just so you guys can see this if this is the first time you're seeing it. So Windows exploit gesture. This is a super helpful tool that I would recommend using. If you haven't used it in a while, you're going to run this update command. And what that's going to do is it's going to write this Excel document database file. That's going to update it with all of the latest exploits that are kind of relevant to today and put them into an Excel document that it's going to use later. The next thing you need to do is you need to have some system info command or some system info text file. So what I mean by that is I'm going to come up in here and we're just going to do system info on the machine. And this is what the same command we ran earlier, but I'm going to copy the results of all of this. And then if we come back down in here, I've actually got a sysinfo file, so I'm just going to use that same one. We're going to edit my existing sysinfo file, and I'm just going to delete all the contents here, and then we're going to paste in the stuff I just copied. So we'll save that, close this out, and now if we head back, it looks like all we need to do is run this suggester.python script, give it a database file, and then give it the system info that we just used. So let's try this out. We're going to use Python and windows-exploit-suggester.py with a database of the 2020, and I just updated this earlier, so 0921, and then we're going to use system info of sysinfo.txt. And that's going to go out, and it's going to, here, I'll make this bigger. So nice. So it came back with a list of vulnerabilities here that it found that it thinks are going to be relevant and present on the system. So we can go through these one by one, and we've got a ton of them in this case. Again, this is because the machine really is just completely unpatched. So we can go through each one of these. We can look for different kernel exploits. We can do search exploits on each of these and just kind of do our digging. I'm going to give you guys a little hint here since this is a walkthrough. You can, and I suggest you take the time to try to kind of research each of these. But the exploit that I actually use to exploit this box and get full system level is not even in this list. I found it by using a tool called Watson. The thing that sucks about Watson is you have to compile it. So you actually have to go through and use Visual Studio and compile all that together, which can be a pain if you've never done that before. If you're interested in learning how to do that, I do have all of the details in this post, but I'm going to skip over that. Watson comes back and it gives us a list of its vulnerabilities that it found, and one of those that it was mentioning here is MS11046. And I just found that this one is super easy to use and it just works really, really well. So I'm going to copy this one and come into a window. I guess we'll come back in here and I'm just going to exit out of this because we're done with it. So we'll come back, make a new split pane, and I'm going to search exploit this vulnerability. And it comes back with two different results. This top one says local privilege escalation on an x86 machine. That's exactly what we're looking for. So I'm going to copy this guy. Oops, copy that guy. And we'll do a quick locate. And I'm sure there's a better way to do this. I'm sure there's like a search exploit option to just copy the first result or something like that. But this is how I do it. I just locate that and then I copy down this into my present working directory. Maybe. There we go. So now we should have this file in here and we can do a quick gedit on it. And it's kind of small text. Just bear with me here, but we do see Windows 7 x86. And if we come down a bit, it does give us some compiling instructions. So I'm going to copy this command that it says that we should use. And then we'll just close this file out. And if we go to paste this command, and I don't know if we need to run an elevator or not, so we're going to throw sudo in there. And it's got everything we need, but it looks like it's looking for a different .c file than the one that we have. I think ours was like 406 something. Yeah, there it is. So I'm going to rename that. The output file of ms11046.exe is fine with me. We're going to run this command, type in my credential, and no error. That's a good sign. And now we have this executable file on our system. So let's go transfer that over to our victim. To redo our FTP window. Make sure you change to binary mode, otherwise it'll send it over in ASCII and it can corrupt the file. I had some bad luck doing that. In fact, if you actually read my blog post, I didn't realize that I was just forgetting to put it into binary mode. So my blog post talks about how you can spin up like an SMB server through Python and then transfer files that way instead of over FTP. So if you're interested in learning about that, definitely check out the text. Again, link is in the description. But now I'm just going to go ahead and put on ms11046.exe, and it didn't like it. I might have had a typo, so I'm just going to copy this. Try this again. Okay, there it goes, and it put it on the machine. So now we're still in that weird directory, so I'm going to change into C. I think it was inetpub www root. Cool. Yep. And then we're looking for this file here that we just put on the system. Let's go ahead and run that exe. And check it out, we're back now into Windows System 32. If I do a quick who am I, we are Inti Authority System. So just like that, we have rooted this machine, or I guess I should say systemed this machine. I don't know what the term is in Windows, but we have full control. And that is the box. So you can go through here and grab, the user.txt or the root.txt or whatever it is that you need to grab the flags and punch them into your Hack the Box account. But that was everything on this video. I hope you learned something. I hope that this was somewhat useful for you. And if you like this type of content, please actually let me know. This is my first time doing a walkthrough like this. And so if these CTF style, videos or something that are interest of you, leave a comment and tell me, because I'm just kind of trying to decide what direction I want to take this channel, and so any feedback you guys provide will help me decide. Cool, that's it for this one, and until next time, I will see you then.